The office party was in full swing, the kind of event where professionalism faded into the background, replaced by music, laughter, and too many open bottles of wine. Lena Carter usually avoided these gatherings, but her coworkers had practically dragged her to this one, promising it would be good for her. It wasn't long before she was nursing her third glass of wine, already feeling the telltale buzz, making everything a little too bright. At the far end of the room stood Victoria Hale, their famously cold, no-nonsense boss. She was as composed as ever, watching the chaos unfold like a stern headmistress at a school dance. Lena had always admired Victoria from afar, her sharp intelligence, her unshakable confidence, but tonight, something about that perfectly stoic expression made Lena braver than she'd ever been before. Or maybe it was just the wine. Before she knew it, Lena was walking straight toward her boss, her heart thudding louder than the music. "Victoria," Lena said, her voice louder than she intended. Victoria arched an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Miss Carter." Lena took a deep breath, her inhibitions slipping away. "I need to tell you something." Victoria crossed her arms, her cool gaze fixed on Lena. "I'm listening." Lena leaned in, her cheeks flushed. I think you're the most beautiful person I've ever seen. And you terrify me. But I also kind of love you." The words hung in the air, loud and impossible to take back. The room spun as Lena realized what she'd just done. And Victoria was staring at her like she'd grown a second head. The world felt like it had slowed to a crawl as Lena's words hung in the air. The room continued to buzz around them, music, laughter, clinking glasses, but it all blurred into a distant hum. Victoria blinked once, slowly, her cool expression betraying nothing. Her arms stayed crossed, her lips pressed into a flat line. Lena's heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was trying to escape her chest. She suddenly felt the full weight of what she'd just done. "Oh no. Oh no, no, no." Victoria tilted her head slightly, her voice calm and unnervingly steady. "You're drunk." Lena's stomach dropped. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. What could she possibly say? She'd just confessed her feelings to Victoria Hale, the coldest, most intimidating woman she'd ever met, and she'd done it in the middle of a crowded party, while tipsy on cheap wine. Victoria exhaled quietly, as if she were trying to maintain her composure. "Go home, Miss Carter." Lena felt the words like a slap, sharp and final. "I didn't mean to," Lena started, but Victoria held up a hand. "Whatever you were about to say," Victoria interrupted, her voice low but firm, "you can tell me when you're sober. If you still want to." Lena felt her face burn with embarrassment as Victoria stepped past her, disappearing into the crowd without another word. The music seemed louder now, the party more chaotic. Lena felt like the walls were closing in. She barely registered her coworker Jenna appearing at her side, her face filled with concern. "Lena? What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." Lena forced a shaky smile. "I need to leave." Jenna frowned but nodded. "Come on, I'll get you an Uber." By the time Lena made it home, her head was spinning, not just from the wine, but from everything that had just happened. If you enjoyed this content and want to support the channel in a special way, try clicking the thanks button below. It's the one with the heart and $sign icon. With super thanks, you can make a direct contribution to the channel, which helps me keep creating awesome videos for you. Now, let's continue the story. She kicked off her heels and collapsed onto the couch, groaning into a pillow. Why did I do that? Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, making her flinch. She reached for it, half dreading what she'd see. It wasn't a text from Victoria. Instead, it was from Jenna. "Jenna, you okay? Call me if you need anything." Lena sighed, typing back a quick thank you before tossing her phone aside. She wished she could rewind time, erase the entire night. But it was too late. She'd confessed. To Victoria Hale. The thought alone made her groan again. Her mind kept replaying the way Victoria had looked at her, calm, unreadable, and completely out of reach. And yet there was something else there too, wasn't there? A flicker of surprise, of hesitation. Or was Lena just imagining things? The next morning hit her like a freight train. The sunlight streaming through the window felt like an interrogation lamp, and the dull throb in her head was punishment enough for her poor life choices. She dragged herself into the kitchen and downed a glass of water, trying to piece herself back together. But no amount of caffeine or cold water could erase the looming reality of work and of seeing Victoria again. By the time Lena made it to the office, she felt more like a ghost than a person. She kept her head down as she walked to her desk, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Her phone buzzed with a meeting reminder. Her stomach twisted as she saw the words. Quarterly review. Meeting with V. Hale, 11 a.m. Lena stared at the screen, a sinking dread pooling in her stomach. Of course, because the universe clearly had a sense of humor. She spent the next 2 hours trying to focus, but her nerves wouldn't let her. Every time someone passed her desk, she jumped slightly, half expecting it to be Victoria calling her into her office early. Finally, at 10:59 a.m., she forced herself to stand, smooth her skirt, and grab her notepad. Her palms felt clammy as she walked down the hall toward Victoria's office. The door was ajar and Lena paused, taking a steadying breath before she knocked lightly. "Come in," came the familiar, cool voice. Lena pushed the door open and stepped inside. Victoria was sitting at her desk, her perfectly tailored blazer making her look as untouchable as ever. "Miss Carter," Victoria said, motioning toward the chair in front of her desk. "Please have a seat." Lena swallowed hard as she sat down, her notepad feeling useless in her lap. She tried to focus on the meeting at hand, on the spreadsheets and projections, but all she could think about was what had happened last night. Victoria's eyes were sharp as ever, but there was a calmness in her tone as she walked Lena through the quarterly numbers. To her credit, Victoria didn't mention the party, or Lena's drunken confession. But that only made the tension worse. When the review finally wrapped up, Victoria closed her laptop and leaned back slightly in her chair. "I think that covers everything," Victoria said, her voice even. Lena nodded, reaching for her things. But as she stood to leave, Victoria spoke again. "Miss Carter." Lena froze, her heart pounding. She turned slowly, clutching her notepad like a lifeline. Victoria's gaze was steady, but there was a slight softness in her expression that hadn't been there before. "About last night," Victoria began, folding her hands neatly on the desk. "I wasn't trying to dismiss you." Lena blinked, stunned by the words. Victoria's voice remained calm, but there was a subtle vulnerability beneath it. "I just wanted you to be sure of what you were saying." Lena's throat tightened. I am." Victoria's lips parted slightly, but for once, she didn't seem to know what to say. She stood, moving around the desk until she was standing just a few feet away from Lena. "For the record," Victoria said softly, her gaze unwavering, "I don't terrify you as much as you think I do." Lena let out a small, nervous laugh. "Maybe just a little." Victoria's lips curved into a faint smile, the first real smile Lena had ever seen from her. The room felt smaller now, the distance between them shrinking with every passing second. Lena's breath caught as Victoria took another small step forward. "If you're serious," Victoria said, her voice barely above a whisper, "then I think we should talk. Somewhere that isn't an office." Lena felt her pulse race, but for the first time since last night, it wasn't out of fear. She nodded slowly, her heart full of a quiet, thrilling hope. "I'd like that." Victoria's smile softened, and Lena felt something shift between them, something fragile but full of possibility. "Good," Victoria murmured. "Tonight?" Lena's grin widened despite herself. "Tonight." As she walked out of Victoria's office, Lena felt like the weight of the world had lifted off her shoulders. Somehow, in the chaos of that drunken confession, she'd opened a door she never thought would open. And for the first time, the future didn't feel terrifying. It felt like the start of something new. The rest of the day felt like an out-of-body experience. Lena moved through her tasks on autopilot, nodding at coworkers, answering emails, and triple-checking her work to make sure she wasn't missing anything important. But no matter what she did, her thoughts kept drifting back to her. Victoria Hale had asked her out. Well, Technically, Victoria had said they should talk, but the way she'd smile, genuinely, softly, had made Lena's chest feel like it was about to burst. She'd spent so much time thinking of Victoria as someone untouchable, someone too composed and intimidating to ever be anything more than her brilliant, stoic boss. But now, she wasn't so sure. By the time 5:30 p.m. rolled around, Lena's nerves had reached a boiling point. She glanced at her phone, checking the text Victoria had sent an hour earlier. Victoria, meet me outside the lobby at 6. Wear something comfortable. Lena stared at the message, trying to decipher what comfortable meant. Was it a casual dinner? A walk? Something else entirely? She decided to go for a mix: dark jeans, ankle boots, and a soft cream-colored sweater that she secretly loved but rarely wore. She pulled her hair into a loose ponytail, took one last look in the mirror, and grabbed her bag. The elevator ride down to the lobby felt like an eternity. By the time the doors slid open, her pulse was thrumming in her ears. Victoria was already waiting by the glass doors, dressed in a black coat over a soft gray turtleneck and dark jeans. She looked effortlessly elegant, as if she'd just stepped out of a magazine spread. When Victoria spotted Lena, she gave a small, almost shy smile. "You made it." Lena laughed softly as she walked up to her. "Of course I did." Victoria nodded toward the exit. "Come on. There's this place a few blocks away. It's quiet and the food's good." They stepped out into the cool evening air, walking side by side down the bustling city street. Their shoulders brushed occasionally, sending small sparks of warmth through Lena's skin. She stole a glance at Victoria, who looked relaxed, almost happy. It was a far cry from the intimidating woman Lena had worked under for the past few years. They reached a small, tucked-away bistro with soft lighting and cozy booths near the windows. The hostess led them to a quiet corner table, and Lena slid into the booth across from Victoria, her heart still racing. Victoria glanced at the menu, but her gaze flickered up toward Lena after a moment. "You seem nervous." Lena gave a nervous laugh, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Can you blame me?" Victoria's lips curved into a soft smile. "Fair enough." They ordered quickly, soup and pasta for Lena, a glass of red wine and a salad for Victoria, and then fell into an easy, quiet conversation. It was strange how normal it felt, like they'd done this a dozen times before. Lena hesitated before asking, "So about last night?" Victoria set her glass down, her expression thoughtful. "You want to know why I didn't just shut you down completely?" Lena nodded. "Yeah." Victoria leaned forward slightly, her hands folded. "Because part of me didn't want to." Lena's breath caught. Victoria's eyes softened. "I've always admired how hard you work, how kind you are. But I thought," she trailed off, shaking her head, "it didn't seem fair. I'm your boss. There are rules, expectations." Lena's heart twisted at the vulnerability in Victoria's voice. "I get it, but..." She swallowed hard. "What if I don't care about the rules?" Victoria laughed, soft, warm, and real. "Then I guess I'm in trouble." The tension between them melted as they both laughed. For the first time, they weren't boss and employee, they were just two people figuring things out. Their food arrived, and the conversation turned lighter. Lena told Victoria about the time she'd accidentally sent an email meant for her best friend to the entire office, and Victoria admitted that she'd once forgotten to mute herself during a Zoom meeting and accidentally insulted a client's terrible wallpaper. Lena was still laughing when Victoria's hand brushed hers across the table. The touch was brief, but it sent a thrill up Lena's spine. When they finally finished eating and stepped back out into the cool night air, the street was quieter, the city lights casting a warm glow over everything. They walked in comfortable silence for a few blocks until they reached the park near the office. The air smelled faintly of leaves and damp earth, and the sound of distant traffic faded into the background. Victoria stopped near a bench, turning toward Lena. Her expression was open, vulnerable in a way Lena had never seen before. "I don't know where this is going," Victoria said quietly. "But I know I don't want to ignore it." Lena felt her heart swell. "Me neither." Victoria hesitated for a second before reaching out, her fingers brushing against Lena's hand. Lena took the hint, lacing their fingers together as warmth spread through her chest. Victoria's smile was soft and full of something Lena dared to believe was real. For a few moments, they just stood there, hand in hand, surrounded by the quiet hum of the city. Lena squeezed Victoria's hand gently. "You know, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to focus at work after this." Victoria laughed softly, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "You'll manage." Lena grinned, feeling lighter than she had in months. "You're probably right." Victoria's gaze lingered on her, something unspoken passing between them. And then, slowly, she leaned in, her breath warm against Lena's skin. Lena's heart raced as their lips met, a soft, tentative kiss that deepened as Victoria's hand rested lightly against her cheek. When they pulled back, Lena's cheeks were flushed, and she couldn't stop the giddy smile that spread across her face. Victoria chuckled, brushing a strand of hair from Lena's face. "I've never done anything like this before." "Me neither," Lena admitted. "But I'm glad we did." Victoria's eyes softened. "Me too." They walked back to the office building, their fingers still entwined, the weight of the past few days finally lifting. As they reached the front steps, Victoria paused, her expression turning serious for a moment. "This won't be easy." Lena nodded. "I know. But it's worth it." Victoria's smile returned, small but genuine. "Yes, it is." Lena watched as Victoria climbed into a waiting cab, the headlights casting a soft glow over her face. She waved as the car pulled away, her heart full of quiet, steady hope. As she walked toward her own car, Lena couldn't help but smile. She'd started this mess with a drunken confession, but somehow it had turned into something far better than she ever expected. And for the first time in a long time, the future felt bright and full of possibility. The next morning, the familiar hum of the office felt sharper somehow, like every whispered conversation and ringing phone was louder than usual. Lena tried to keep her head down as she settled at her desk, determined to look busy and normal. She wasn't sure how long she could hold on to that illusion, but she was determined to try. Her phone buzzed with a new notification. "Avery Hale, meeting in my office at 10 a.m. Don't forget the portfolio review." Lena stared at the screen, her stomach tightening. There was nothing unusual about the message. It was polite, professional, but she couldn't help but read between the lines. She wasn't meeting Victoria, the woman who'd held her hand in the park and kissed her under the streetlights. She was meeting Avery Hale, the formidable, cool-headed boss who commanded entire boardrooms with a single glance. Lena took a deep breath and reminded herself that nothing had changed, not in public at least. She wasn't sure if anyone could tell how badly her nerves were jangling beneath the surface, but she kept her shoulders back and her chin up as she made her way down the hall. The frosted glass door to Victoria's office was slightly ajar when Lena arrived. She knocked lightly before stepping inside. Victoria was seated at her desk, her hair pulled back in a sleek twist, her blazer perfectly tailored as always. She looked up when Lena entered, her expression unreadable for a fraction of a second before softening just slightly. "Morning," Victoria said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Lena closed the door behind her and took a seat, clutching her notebook. "Morning." The meeting started as any other, discussion points, project updates, notes on upcoming deadlines. But beneath the normal flow of work talk, Lena couldn't help but notice the tiny things. The way Victoria's gaze lingered just a second longer than usual, the way her voice softened slightly whenever she addressed Lena directly. When the meeting wrapped up, Victoria closed her laptop and leaned back slightly, folding her hands in front of her. "Are you free tonight?" Victoria asked, her voice casual, but her gaze steady. Lena's heart skipped a beat.
"Yeah,
I am." Victoria's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Good. I thought we could continue our conversation." Lena felt a warmth spread through her chest. "I'd like that." The rest of the day felt endless. Lena powered through her to-do list, replying to emails and finishing her reports as efficiently as possible. But her mind kept wandering to the evening ahead. By the time 6 p.m. rolled around, Lena was practically buzzing with anticipation. She met Victoria outside the office again, where a sleek black car was waiting. Victoria smiled as Lena approached. "Hop in." Lena slid into the passenger seat, and Victoria followed, shutting the door behind them. The driver pulled away from the curb smoothly, merging into the evening traffic. "Where are we going?" Lena asked, curious. Victoria's eyes twinkled with quiet amusement. "You'll see." The car wound its way through the city until it reached a quiet, upscale neighborhood filled with charming cafes and quiet restaurants. They stopped in front of a small, understated bistro with glowing fairy lights strung across the awning. Victoria led Lena inside, where they were seated in a cozy booth near the back. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, the low hum of conversation blending with the soft jazz playing overhead. Lena glanced around, feeling like she'd stepped into another world. "This place is beautiful." Victoria smiled. "It's one of my favorites. I thought you'd like it." The evening passed in a blur of delicious food, shared stories, and quiet laughter. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lena felt completely at ease. After dessert, Victoria leaned forward slightly, her expression more serious. "I've been thinking a lot about us," she began, her voice quiet but steady. Lena's breath caught in her throat. "And?" Victoria hesitated, then reached across the table, her fingers brushing against Lena's. "I want to do this right. I don't want to hide, but I also want to protect what we have." Lena nodded, understanding. "Me too." Victoria's fingers curled gently around Lena's hand. "Then we take it one step at a time. We figure this out together." Lena's heart swelled with warmth. "Okay." They left the restaurant hand in hand, the cool night air brushing against their skin. They didn't rush back to the car. Instead, they took their time, walking along the quiet street as the city lights twinkled above them. When they reached the car, Victoria paused, turning to face Lena fully. "Can I kiss you?" Victoria asked softly, her eyes searching Lena's. Lena felt a giddy rush of emotion as she nodded. "Yes." Victoria's hands cupped Lena's face gently as she leaned in, her lips brushing against Lena's in a soft, lingering kiss. The world around them seemed to disappear, leaving only the warmth of their shared moment. When they pulled back, Lena couldn't stop smiling. "I could get used to this." Victoria chuckled, her thumb brushing lightly against Lena's cheek. "Me too." The drive back to Lena's apartment was quiet but comfortable, their hands intertwined the entire time. When they reached her building, Lena hesitated, not wanting the night to end. Victoria seemed to sense her hesitation and smiled softly. "I'll see you tomorrow." Lena's heart felt impossibly full. "Tomorrow." Victoria leaned in, pressing one last kiss to Lena's forehead before she pulled away. Lena watched as the car drove off, her heart still racing. As she made her way inside, she couldn't stop thinking about how much had changed in just a few days. What had started as a drunken confession had become something real, something she hadn't dared to dream about. And as she closed her apartment door behind her, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, the quiet certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The morning sun streamed through the windows, casting a soft glow over the office floor. Lena walked in with a coffee in hand and a nervous flutter in her chest. But this time, it wasn't the kind of nervousness that came from dread, it was excitement, anticipation. She made her way to her desk, trying to look composed, but she caught a glimpse of Victoria walking into her office, her tailored blazer crisp and elegant. Their eyes met for a brief moment. Victoria's gaze softened, just enough for Lena to catch it, and a subtle, knowing smile curved her lips before she disappeared behind the door. Lena's heart raced, but she forced herself to sit down and focus. She wasn't sure how long she could keep this up, working side by side without letting her feelings show, but she was determined to try. By noon, Lena was deep into her tasks when her phone buzzed. "Victoria, lunch?" Lena bit back a smile as she typed a reply. "Lena, is this part of my performance review?" A few seconds later, another buzz. "Victoria, strictly off the record." Lena felt a rush of warmth as she grabbed her bag and headed toward the elevator. Victoria was waiting downstairs, her usual cool composure in place, but her eyes lit up when she saw Lena. They walked to a nearby cafe, small, quiet, and tucked away from the main street. Victoria ordered for both of them, and Lena couldn't help but smile at how well she knew her preferences. As they sat across from each other, Victoria reached for Lena's hand under the table, lacing their fingers together. The touch was small but grounding. "How are you holding up?" Victoria asked, her voice gentle. Lena shrugged, though her heart swelled at the concern in Victoria's eyes. "Honestly, better than I thought I would." Victoria smiled, her thumb brushing lightly over Lena's hand. "Good." They ate slowly, savoring the time away from the office chaos. The conversation drifted from work to books they wanted to read, places they wanted to visit, and quiet dreams they hadn't shared with anyone else before. It felt easy, natural. And Lena realized that with Victoria, she didn't have to pretend or shrink herself down to fit some unspoken rule. The rest of the day passed in a blur, and by the time the office emptied out, Lena felt a strange mix of exhaustion and peace. She finished up her final task and was shutting down her computer when Victoria's voice made her pause. Heading out, Lena looked up to see Victoria standing near her desk, her blazer draped over one arm. "Yeah," Lena said, slipping her phone into her bag. "You?" Victoria nodded. "I thought I'd walk you out." Lena's heart gave a small flutter as she grabbed her coat and followed Victoria down the hallway. The elevator ride was quiet but comfortable, and when the doors opened into the lobby, Lena almost wished it wasn't over yet. As they stepped outside into the cool evening air, Victoria hesitated. "I've been thinking," Victoria began, her voice soft but steady. "About us." Lena turned toward her, the streetlights casting a warm glow over them. "Me too." Victoria took a small step closer, their shoulders brushing. "I don't want to rush anything. But I also don't want to pretend this isn't important." Lena's heart felt impossibly full. She reached for Victoria's hand, her fingers curling around hers. "It is important." Victoria exhaled slowly, as if letting go of something she'd been holding for a long time. "I never thought I'd be here. With you." Lena smiled, a soft, genuine smile that felt like home. "Neither did I. But I'm glad we are." Victoria's expression softened as she leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to Lena's lips. The world around them faded, leaving only the warmth of their connection and the steady beat of their hearts. When they pulled apart, Victoria's eyes shone with quiet happiness. "Dinners?" Victoria asked, her voice light but hopeful. Lena laughed softly. "You know you don't have to bribe me with food, right?" Victoria chuckled, her hand tightening around Lena's. "I know, but I like spoiling you." Lena's smile widened as they began to walk down the street together, their pace slow and unhurried. A few weeks later, the office buzzed with its usual Monday chaos, but something had shifted. Their relationship wasn't a secret anymore. It was theirs, open and steady. Some coworkers were surprised, others shrugged it off with knowing smiles, but no one questioned it. Everyone could see how much they respected and balanced each other. During a particularly long meeting, Lena caught Victoria glancing at her from across the room. There was no mistaking the warmth in her eyes, and Lena's heart swelled. After the meeting ended, Victoria brushed past her in the hallway, her voice low and teasing. "Coffee later?" Lena smiled, her cheeks flushing. "Always." The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and reports, but beneath it all was the steady hum of something real and undeniable. That evening, as they walked side by side under the city lights, Lena couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed. What had started as a messy, drunken confession had become something she hadn't dared to hope for, a quiet, steady love that felt like home. And for the first time, Lena didn't feel like she was navigating the chaos of life alone. She had Victoria, and, together, they could handle whatever came next.